You're watching Power Nation. Today on Engine Power, LS stands for lots of spooling as we grab a 5.3 from the junkyard and stick a big old turbo on it.
We show you how to do it the safe way and the right way without blowing it up.
Hey everyone, welcome to a pretty unique episode of Engine Power because today we are doing something we have never done before, and that is the infamous Junkyard Turbo LS. Now these engines have been around since the 90s, and since then people have been pulling them out of junkyards and slapping big old honking turbos on them and making pretty impressive numbers. Now we've never really done it ourselves, honestly, because it's a little too Molly Hatchet for us, but today we are going to tackle this and we're going to show you how we would do it. So as our base, we have a 5.3 liter LMG from a 2009 Silverado. This came from a local junkyard, so this is exactly how we got it. It didn't have a front drive, we put an electric water pump on it, has no ECU, no harness, and we know absolutely nothing about it.
And we are not even going to touch it. We are even leaving the displacement on demand in it. We are going to be dynoing it just like it is. But first, we have to see if this thing is any good. So we're going to pull it in the dyno room, do a compression test on it, see if we have all 8 holes. If that's good, we are going to make a dyno pull on it to see if it lives through that so we can get a baseline. After that, the gloves are off. But we're going to show you how we are going to make it safe, and we are going to make it so it runs on boost and see what happens. It's supposed to make big power, but it might not do it as cheaply as all your buddies say it does or the guys on the internet. So let's get it in, see what it does.
In order to get our LS running, we actually need a ECU and wiring setup, and it did not come with the engine. They actually just cut the entire harness off. So to make it much easier, we're just gonna jump straight to the aftermarket, and we actually went to Haltech and got one of their Nexus Rebel LS EFI systems for our Gen 4 LS. Now they make these for both the Gen 3 and the Gen 4, and it's all based around their Nexus ECU, and this has a ton of cool features. It has a nice hard aluminum case, battery and ground connections that are large, an internal 4-bar map sensor. It has O2 control, boost control, and nitrous control. And something that is pretty unique about this ECU is it has a built-in power distribution module. What that means is it has 4 25 amp outputs that can be pulse width modulated or set up to have current protection on them. Another cool thing that this unit has is built-in Wi-Fi. So you can do all the setup and tuning with your laptop in the included USB cable, so you can use Haltech's NSP software, or on your smartphone you can use the Haltech Connect app and actually do it all straight from your phone. And for ease, they also made the harness extremely easy to plug and play. It's a very high quality harness, but they have put a ton of breakouts in it. They're using a Gen 4. We have all of the adapter harnesses for our engine. We have an EV6 injector harness, the drive-by-wire throttle body harness, the map sensor adapter harness for the Gen 4, and the oil pressure adapter harness for the Gen 4. We also got a pedal adapter harness to run a Corvette style pedal position sensor that we need for the drive-by-wire. And if you order the Gen 3 kit, it comes with all the same stuff, but specific for the Gen 3 LS engines, and it's really easy to swap back and forth. All you have to do is change out the adapter harnesses, but you don't have to rewire your entire car. We're gonna get this harness installed, which shouldn't take long, and have this engine running pretty soon. All the adapter harnesses plug right into the stock junkyard sensors, and with the ECU mounted, the engine is wired up lickety-split.
Because we got our engine out of a salvage yard, that could create a few problems for us because the engine has been sitting. Fuel will evaporate and create gum and varnish in the entire system. So before we run this thing, we're gonna dump in some Berryman B12 Chemtool. Now this is a fuel injection cleaner, and what it's designed to do is eliminate all that varnish and gum in the entire fuel system from the tank, lines, and anything that's in the engine, especially the injectors. If you don't have clean injectors, the engine won't run properly. B12 Chemtool comes in a couple of different sizes. This one, which will treat up to 21 gallons, and also a larger one that will treat motorhomes, SUVs, things with larger fuel systems. You can put this in at 1 ounce per gallon. It is catalytic converter and O2 safe and will help make things more efficient. We know nothing about this engine, so one test we want to do before we start it is a cranking compression test. With all the spark plugs out, we'll check each cylinder individually to quickly determine the condition of the engine. All right, all 8 cylinders have between 200 and 210 PSI, so that's a good indication it's in decent shape. What we'll do next is throw a new set of spark plugs in it and run it. We still don't even know if it has good oil pressure yet, so that's next. We have our Junkyard 5.3 up and running. We didn't even bother taking the tags off it that came from the yard. The compression was good, the leak down was decent. We literally looked at it, put some fresh oil in it, and started it up. So how'd that Haltech work out?
Yeah, I'm running the app here for the Haltech ECU because it actually connects via Wi-Fi. So watching all the stuff on this, it started right up. I mean, it's super close on fuel trims, within 2 or 3%, which is perfect. Oil pressure looks great on there, and I mean, it's a Junkyard engine, so who knows what to expect. It seems to run fine, so we're gonna find out, and hopefully it doesn't shoot any parts out or anything. I mean, it's up to Tim. Let's make a hit and see what it does.
Pretty smooth. 353.4 horsepower. Yeah, you have to read that part. I can't see it.
Yeah, that's right at 5,500, so it's like right at the peak there, but it's definitely cresting over.
370.6 pound-feet of torque.
Right at 4,600. So yeah, truck engine, low-ish RPM for a bone stock, OEM engine. That's actually pretty solid.
Oil pressure went up the whole time, as we're gonna make a backup pull just to say we did. Pedal works nice out there.
Yeah.
Smooth as glass.
Pretty much the same, I think.
I think it's probably going to make the same power up. 353.7 and 368.6.
Yeah. Normally, this would be the point where we would pull it apart and start putting parts in it, but we're not going to open it up at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be $500 though.
No. Sadly, they're never $500.
They're never $500.
Up next,
we give our Junkyard engine a bath so we can put some new parts on it and send it on the dyno.
All right, we got our 5.3 outside because we're gonna give this thing a quick bath before we do our upgrades. We're gonna hit it with some degreaser, scrub it, and pressure wash it. We'll give the engine a generous soaking with Berryman engine degreaser and give it a quick and dirty scrub to help break up all the stuck deposits and gunk. All the ports are blocked or taped off, so we aren't afraid to blast it with a pressure washer during the rings.
With the engine about as clean as we can get it, now it's time for the fun part. We went on Summit Racing Equipment's website and got the cheapest turbo system that we could find. But it comes with a lot of good stuff. It's actually everything on this side of the table. It starts out with a very, very nicely constructed turbo manifold, a couple of 60mm wastegates, a VS Racing 7875 turbo with a 1.25 AR, and all of the hardware to get everything hooked up. It even includes one exhaust gasket because you don't even have to pull the driver's side exhaust manifold, and lucky for us, we don't have to because it's got a couple of broken bolts and we don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, so that's a lot of cool parts and a lot of good eye candy to look at for a great price, but there's a lot of other stuff you actually need to complete your turbo kit. It's not just the turbo itself. So we need a crossover pipe to connect the two manifolds. So we have the matching one from Summit. We need intercooler piping and couplers to run our intercooler. We need a blow-off valve on the charge piping so we're not trapping all that boost pressure in front of the throttle blades. We need bigger injectors, so we have a set of 80-pound trick flow injectors because we need a lot more fuel to go with the extra power. We need a cooler spark plug so we're not detonating inside the cylinder. We need lines and fittings to run and return oil from the turbo, and you could run the wastegates right on the spring pressure, but if you wanted to do something a little bit cooler, you could run a boost controller, which adds a little bit of a cost, either whether you're talking about a manual one or an electronic. That's stuff that you have to factor in. So we got to do a little bit of tear down, but and we're going to be making some boost.
We are only pulling a few pieces from our 5.3 liter, but the first one is the oil pan. So we'll drain the fresh oil we just put in, which is already pretty dark. We are dropping the pan to weld in a permanent oil drain bung, but we are doing it carefully since we don't want to waste our turbo money on a new gasket.
None of them might be tight. Ooh, that one's good. LS exhaust manifold bolts are notorious for breaking, like the one already broken on the driver's side, but by some miracle, the passenger side bolts came out easy. That's a win. I don't care who you are, Junkyard LS with no broken exhaust bolts on this side, that's a win.
The Summit turbo manifold goes on with our new exhaust gasket and our ARP manifold bolts. Then the VS Racing turbo can be mounted followed by both of the Summit 60mm wastegates with the 4-pound springs already installed. They will just dump into the open air for now on the dyno. This stainless crossover pipe is specifically made for this manifold setup and should clear most transmissions. Plus, it has multiple slip connections to make it easy to install in a vehicle.
With our oil pan relatively clean, we can step up several drill bit sizes to create a 13/16" hole for the Summit Racing aluminum -10 bung to be welded in. We prefer a permanently welded oil pan fitting, but if you don't have access to a welder, you could use a bulkhead fitting or take it to a local shop to have it welded up cheaply. With the weld still cooling, we'll slap our oil pan back on, reusing the OG gasket, which was actually in great condition. We will change the oil filter crossover on the side of the pan for this Summit Racing one that has an 1/8" NPT port to feed our turbo pressurized oil through an Earl's -4 line. A matching -10 line connects our oil drain, and that simple install concludes most of the work on the engine.
Up next, Big Boost Bill Lutz is in the house with his badass blown Camaro.
Here in Engine Power, we love horsepower and we love fast cars, and today we have the chance to look at both.
We have an absolute monster in the shop. This is an alcohol-injected, blown Camaro, and we have the owner, Mr. Bill Lutz of Lutz Racing. Tell us about what you have brought us.
Well, it's a '67 Camaro that I've owned for over 30 years.
Oh.
This car went from, when I first got it, it would run in the 9s, and I drove it on the street, obviously, and drove it on the street actually till it went clear in the 7s. At that point in time, it had a Gene Fulton, all aluminum 615, and we could still drive it back then. Today, it's got a Brad Anderson 521" Hemi, and this is where you end up after 30 years. You got something that makes 4,100 horsepower. It goes really fast. Currently today, we've been 374 at 203 in the 8th. And in quarter mile, I've been 580 at 250-ish roughly. The Hot Shot secrets, I call them partners. I don't call them sponsors. We're really partners in this together. We were having an issue where we were burning push rods up at a rate that was unbelievable. And it was always burning the tips off of them. And so a good friend of mine told me, he goes, hey, I got a buddy of mine that works at an oil company, and he said he'd like you to try their product. And so out of that comes the 60-weight alky oil that they make today. And we've never burned a push rod since the day we put their oil in this motor. It's like if somebody breaks, I will sit there until they literally make me stage this car, because I want to race you, I want to beat you. I don't want a race given to me. I probably got 30, 40 people running this oil now in their motors at the racetrack for that reason. So like I said, it started out as something just to keep us from burning push rods, but in reality, it was, it's one of the best things we've ever did.
Because that's what we love about Hot Shot Secret is the taglines, powered by science. Those guys, they do a ton of work with racers like yourself to make a product that not only solves problems like that, but they work with them to handle their needs, whatever it is, whether it's engine, transmission, or rear end.
When you make stuff that can make the big rigs run a long, long time, there's diesel trucks out there that have some additional filters on them with their oil that literally run their oil for over 1 million miles. What you find out is when you add in the synthetic oil that we run, and then you add in the everyday diesel treatment and all that, you'll start to see the numbers on the dash for your fuel mileage. It starts changing, and you're like, well, wait a minute, why am I getting an extra 1 to 2 miles per gallon? And and why are we going an extra 5,000, 10,000 miles on oil changes? And it's all just because of the quality of the product itself. It's just crazy to think that any oil could do that, but it does.
That's the benefit of science and technology. That's powered by science. Well, Bill, we thank you very much for bringing this by. I know you're a busy man. You go to a lot of races, but we want to thank you for bringing this by. This is super cool.
I appreciate it, guys, and hopefully we can get you out to a race that we're at, and I'd love to have you in the pits so you experience it firsthand at a race.
Come Coming up, we finish up the turbo system on our Junkyard 5.3. We show you a little boost goes a long way. All right, we have gone ahead and got our 5.3 liter LS back into the dyno cell exactly how it was before, except for with a big turbo on it. And we've gone ahead and finished out the turbo system. So we've added a 4-inch downpipe, we've added our turbo snuggie, we've plumbed our wastegates through our single valve boost controller, we've added all our charge piping and our dyno intercooler, which is actually just a pull-out intercooler from like a Duramax Summit 50mm blow-off valve, and we've added a intake air temp sensor into the charge piping for our EFI system. Now we don't have to actually buy a higher bar map sensor because the Haltech Reba LS has a 4-bar map sensor built in, so all we have to do is plumb that to the manifold. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the EFI system, and Pat is going to change the oil.
Now that the engine's back on the dyno, we're gonna give it a fresh oil change, and that means put a new filter on. Before, we just ran it like it was from the junkyard, so we're gonna put a new filter on, and what we picked up are Wix XP Extended Performance Filter. These filters are designed to protect engines up to 20,000 miles. We actually took our filter cutter and cut one apart that hasn't been run yet to show you the construction. In the bottom of these, the spring is in the bottom that holds the filter off the bottom. And in the bottom there is also a bypass valve. If this filter becomes completely plugged, it will still supply the engine with oil. It has a hybridized synthetic fiber material that will filter out to 99% of contaminants. It also has metal ends and has a silicone anti-drainback valve. Very well constructed filter. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get this back on and we're gonna get this engine running with our new filter and oil.
We talked earlier about boost controllers, but in today's Summit Tech Tip, we wanted to go over the different types and how they work. The first is a manual boost controller. This is a T that goes in between manifold pressure source and the bottom of the wastegate and restricts flow. So if you have a 5-pound spring in your wastegate, give this thing a couple turns, it might take 6 or 7 PSI for that spring to allow the wastegate valve to open. A single valve electronic boost controller works in a very similar fashion, but it is pulse width modulated by the ECU, and it vents that manifold pressure off before it reaches the wastegate, so you can vary this anywhere from spring pressure up to as much as the system will make. A dual valve electronic boost controller actually works by adding pressure to the top of the wastegate, so this is either from a manifold pressure source or a fixed pressure source like a CO2 bottle. One valve will fill and add pressure, and one will vent it or take it away. So this is extremely variable depending on what you want to do and what boost you want to run. All three of these have their place and their application, but if you have any questions about which one would be right for yours, you can talk to the experts at Summit Racing Equipment and they'll get you sorted out. Okay, Turbo LS, first start. It's exactly like it did before, which is good, so it should.
Well, right now it shouldn't know it has a turbo on
Yeah,
it. So,
not until we add boost. That's kind of the good thing about turbos is that driving around the engine acts pretty normally, and then you get into boost and starts making all kinds of power, so.
Now, it looks like I'm texting somebody, but I'm not. I am actually looking at the boost control, so.
Yeah, the Haltech Connect app, you can do a lot of stuff from that. It's actually really, really cool. So we got our, you got our boost target programmed in there somehow?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to kill this thing. Remember, this is a junkyard engine. It hasn't been apart. The heads haven't been off. The rods and pistons have not been out of it, so.
And we are on pump gas, which is, you know, as we've always said, kind of finicky fuel. You got to be really careful. So we're going to be
that's the big limiter. So.
Yep, we're going to be pig rich and low on timing, but we're going to see what we can make here. We got boost.
Air fuel looks good. Oh, I'm watching it as it's going on the screen. That was glass smooth. I think it made pretty big torque.
For a 325 cubic inch engine, it's making 524.5 pound-feet and 512 horsepower.
Yeah.
Right at 5,500.
How much boostation did that have?
Let's see. Peaking at 6 PSI.
Yep, that's what the target was.
Yeah, so we have a four-ish pound spring in there and a little bit of boost control on top of it so we can vary it however we want. But I mean, fuels look good.
But make another poll.
Yeah.
And we'll just see how she looks.
Yeah, let's just do another one just to prove this thing is gonna live.
That Haltech is unbelievably good control.
Yeah, very, very smooth.
Look at that.
6 PSI.
like it was made to do it.
All right, look at that. 519.9.
I'm gonna call that 520.
Yeah, I mean, that's sure. 519.9 for torque and 507.8 for power. So very, very close, pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Nice curve too. Like the boost is nice and steady. That Haltech boost control stuff working awesome, honestly, because I saw 6 PSI all the way through.
No, the whole thing's working good. The Haltech system is shows its versatility, right? Because we went from NA, put it in, put what we wanted for a target boost, and away we go. It runs great. Everything looks smooth.
Yeah.
The engine's living, and this is, again, we say that in joke, but I tell you what, very economical. You know, if you have an engine, great. We went and bought a Junkyard engine, put a very economical kit on it that Summit Racing had. You know, that comes with a turbo. We had to add some pipes that went with the kit, but very, very simple. I've never put something on that's that easy.
Yeah, I mean, you buy an engine for $500, you know, that's pretty common. We probably have 2,500, I would say, and all the turbo stuff. We're not going to push it any farther just because you don't want to turn it into a time bomb. This is, anybody could put this together, you know, and it will be safe, it'll run great. The Haltech control will keep it nice where the AFR targets are supposed to be, so you don't have to do any crazy tuning, and the engine will live that way.
We showed how to do it safely and economically, and proof's in the pudding, man.
Knocked it out.
Great success.
For more high-power engine builds like this one, you can find Engine Power on Power Nation.